The purpose of this lesson is to study the concept of audience projections in media planning, buying, and selling. In this specific example, television ratings. With all media and marketing planning in general, we are always planning into the future. Thus, the concept of projecting audiences and other things is very important to understand. After you finish this video lesson, you will be able to define the concept of projecting audiences, calculate a TV rating projection, recognize the application of shares, HUDs, or PUDs in projecting television audiences, recognize how to use and read Nielsen ratings, recognize how Nielsen collects rating information during audience measurement periods, and report the results of projected ratings and audiences in general, and also learn how to use this concept of projections for budgeting and audience estimates. So let's start with the basic terminology you need to understand this lesson. In a previous video, you learned basic terminology and concepts needed to understand the actual calculation of ratings, shares, HUDs, or PUDs. The following are definitions and explanations of what a Nielsen rating book is, or rating data, and audience measurement, now traditionally called sweeps. Even though times and technology are changing the industry, we will define the concept of sweeps to be synonymous with audience measurement periods. So let's get on with the definitions. Rating projections, the formula is share divided by 100 multiplied times the HUDs or the PUDs. Sweeps are the specific times during the year that the Nielsen company conducts and collects audience measurements data. Set meters is a technologically sophisticated system where small devices or meters are connected to televisions in selected homes to collect audience viewership data. The people meter is the same concept of the set meter. In addition to the set data, the people meter captures individual viewers in a more granular reading of television watching by demographic and not just the household viewing information. DMA. Remember that DMA stands for Designated Market Area, and this term was coined by Nielsen to mean a region within a major city in the U.S. in which radio and television stations audiences are measured. So let's make sense of all of this. As you recall from previous lessons, Nielsen ratings are the audience measurement system developed by the Nielsen company in an effort to determine the audience size and composition of television programming in the United States and wherever they operate globally. In the case of radio, Nielsen Audio, which used to be Arbitron, gathers audiences listening to radio stations. The assembled statistical models provide a rendering of the audiences of any given show, network, and programming hour. Now, the way that this data is gathered, whether it is for households or specific demographics such as teens 12 to 17, adults 18 to 49, women 18 to 34, men 25 to 54, etc. It happens in various methodologies which we will analyze shortly. If you took a course in statistics, you understand that you cannot measure every single person in a market or DMA. The way Nielsen finds out who's watching or listening is using a sample of typical households of television viewers in that particular market. A sample is defined as individuals or households selected from a universe to represent that particular universe. A universe is the population chosen for a research study, which could be national, meaning all of the U.S., or individual markets or DMAs. The period of measurement to gather ratings data is called sweeps traditionally. Sweeps were the brainchild of A.C. Nielsen Company, which popularized TV ratings back in the 50s, but it's still the industry standard and the currency. Why does this matter? Because this is how networks and stations, media, make money selling advertising to the eyeballs or ears they attract with their programming. The television industry, through Nielsen methodology, recognizes four major viewing audience measurement periods or sweeps as the most important periods of the year, and these are the months of February, May, July, and November. What sweeps generally means is that Nielsen is collecting viewership information from participating households and households members within the selected sample for that market during these periods. Given advances in technology and the way people watch shows on actual TVs, or what is called linear television watching, rather than on demand via tablets, laptops, or smartphones, sweeps weeks can be considered a throwback to simpler times. Linear television watching means that, say, 50 million people would watch an episode of a program at the same time on the same network across the country. Maybe different stations, but on the same network. The television viewership data collected is gathered into Nielsen's ratings report and distributed to the clients paying for Nielsen data. The good news for the industry is that there's now a rated week every month, thanks to changes Nielsen has made. Although the logistics took some time, Nielsen will and is providing electronic measurement in every month. All this being said, the key periods of February, May, July, and November are still closely monitored. To adjust to this shift, programming should change. And instead of all those big launches that, those of you that watch TV, they happen in the fall and in the spring, combined with summer periods of slow new programming coming along, broadcasters at the national and local level should move towards providing more compelling content year-round. This is a process, but things are moving in that direction. The methodologies mainly used to gather viewing data are set meters and people meters. For a more specific understanding on how each of these work, just go to the internet and search for each specific methodology. Not to confuse the matter, but Nielsen also measures viewing data for a limited selection of key target audiences which are delivered to Nielsen clients at the earliest opportunity the next morning. So in other words, these overnight ratings are the quickest report of viewership data available for specific markets and some demos, and available within 24 hours or less of airing of the TV program. Always remember that in television, just like any other media, an advertising is actually buying potential exposure to the media and not a guarantee that the audience actually was exposed to the commercial or advertising message. So let's go back to audience projections. Understand that every time you plan a campaign, you're planning into the future. Like I tell my students, you do not have a crystal ball to know how many people will be watching or listening or consuming the media you're selecting. So you have to guesstimate using media mathematical equations, using the data available that you have at the time of planning, meaning right now in my hands. And always remember that in a negotiation to schedule airtime, not only are you negotiating the rates, but the audience delivery in way of impressions and in case of broadcasting, rating points. You're still negotiating that. This is true with any media, although some media are easier to track audience deliveries than others. In the case of Nielsen, we will still use these four key audience measurement periods for the months of February, May, July, and November. The data that you have in your hands at the moment provides an understanding of how well the show is doing at the time you're planning your campaign. Let's say that you're planning a campaign, meaning you receive the buying brief with all the information you need to negotiate the airtime scheduling right now for a major retailer during the month of February. So let's assume today is February. and you have to run during the November holiday season, and your target is the demographic adults 18 to 49. The Nielsen audience data that you have available is for the month of February. And because your campaign will run in November, you will want to see how many adults 18 to 49 watch television during that period of the year. So let me go back a minute to see how clients look at calendar year in quarters. So let me write this down. So you have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So quarter one is January, February, and March. Q2 is April, May, and June. Q3 is July, August, September. And Q4 is October, November, and December. Each of these important audience measurement periods align with a quarter. So if you look at, key measurement periods, you have February for first quarter, May for second quarter, July for third quarter, and November for fourth quarter. There are two measurements that we look at in order to understand how to project a rating. And that is share. Let me write it in another color. So these two measurements that we look at in order to understand how to project a rating is share and Hutter pot levels. Remember that the ratings projection formula is shares divided by 100 and multiplied by HUTs if you're using homes, or PUTs if you're using demos. Let's understand why. The first number we look at is share. And if you understand a share is how well a television program is doing at the specific period of television viewing. Think of, let's say, adults 18 to 49 viewing on Monday between 8 to 9 p.m. as a pie. So let's put it right here. So we're looking at Monday, 8 to 9. And the demo is adults and the viewing, let's do like a pie. So let's say that you have program 1, program 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So this is the pie, where each slice of the pie for each program is their share of the total pie or viewing done during Monday 8 to 9. This is their share. The total pie or total viewing done on Monday 8 to 9 for adults 18 to 49 is the PUT, or people using television. If we were talking about households, it would be HUD. For illustration purposes, let's assume that we're planning this campaign during the month of February, which would be the present time, as I said a minute ago. And that we are calculating the rating projections for program A for a major, let's say, retailer for the November holiday campaign, which is planning to run in the future. The most accurate perspective of how well program A is doing is by looking at the shares data of the period or book that you have available during the planning stage, which means in this example, you have the February ratings book or data in your hands. Remember that by looking at the share of program A, you know what percentage of people using television Monday 8 to 9 or PUTs are watching program A, or their share of the total viewing done by adults 18 to 49 during this hour. Shares tells you how healthy program A is in its time period and against other programs. Okay? Again, the share information you take from the audience measurement data that you have available at the time of the plan or the scheduling or the negotiation, which in this case is the February ratings and audience data. The second piece of information is the HUD or PUT levels of the period of the year that you're planning forward to, but because you don't have a crystal ball to look at that, you have to go to the past. So in this case, when we look at how many total adults 18 to 49 watched television on Monday 8 to 9 back in November of the previous year, remember that you do not have to have that future November audience data. You don't have it. So you have to go to the past November data to study actual audience levels to estimate potential future audience. I hope this is clear, but we're going to do it in an example. Okay, so let's start. Just refer to the video lesson PowerPoint on understanding television projections and study the chart. But we will keep this calculation simple to understand. Remember the general... Okay, let me pick up...
yeah, we're going to pick it up from slide 2, sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
I was reading an email.
Okay.
All right.
3, 2, 1. Okay, let's start. Refer to the video lesson PowerPoint on understanding television projections to study the chart. We will keep this calculation simple to understand. Remember the general formula for projections, and let's put it here again, is share divided by 100 times PUTs or HUTs. Okay, so understanding the numbers. Remember that this data is provided by Nielsen, and all you're doing is calculating a rating projection of the available data that you have at your hands. There are two sets of numbers for the previous year and the current year you need for this calculation. The share for program A, Monday 8 to 9, and the PUTs for adults 18 to 49 for Monday 8 to 9, November. Obviously, there are numbers in this chart that you may not use or you're not going to use. So if you're planning a campaign, so let's say here, you're planning a campaign in February, let's say, and let's assume now is February, and you will have the February ratings data. So you may not have the May data or the July or the November for that year. So I hope it makes sense. So if we're in February right now, assuming you're not going to have May of this year, July, or November. So I hope this makes sense. Your present time is February of this year, which we are assuming for the purpose of this example. So you're in the month of February planning for this negotiation. So you will take the share Monday 8 to 9 program A from the current February Nielsen data. That if you look at the chart, the number is 17. So 17, okay? So remember, if you're using the current year, February Nielsen data, that is 17. Look at the chart. Meaning that out of all adults 18 to 49 watching television Monday 8 to 9 or the pot, 17% is the share. And they were watching, 17% were watching program A. The second number that you need and look at is pot, or people using television during Monday 8 to 9. If you're planning a campaign for the November future, you have to look at November of the previous year. Remember that pot is all the adults 18 to 49 watching Monday 8 to 9 the previous year during the month of November. This is the addition of all the ratings and all the programs for adults 18 to 49, Monday 8 to 9 in November. This number signifies how many potential adults 18 to 49 can be watching television during November using Nielsen historical data. Remember that we're guesstimating, and that's how projections are done. The pot in this example for November of the previous year is 65. Meaning that 65% of all the adults 18 to 49 in the universe or of the market or DMA were watching television Monday 8 to 9 during the measurement period or November sweep. So now let's go to step 3. Let's calculate this. This is a very simple calculation. Okay. So let's calculate the projected rating for this major retailer client for program A for the campaign running in December. First, you take the share from the book you have available at the time of the plan, which in this case, just recapping, is the February Nielsen data of the current year. The share is 17. Second, divided times by 100 is 0.17. And second, you take the November pot from the previous year, which is 65. So 17 divided by 100 equals 0.17 multiplied times 65 pot. So again, this is February current. And this is November previous year. Multiply, so 0.17 multiplied times 65 equals 11.05, or let's say 11.1 rounded. So now let's go to step 3 and understand what exactly is it that we're looking at. Okay. So the projected rating for program A for a campaign running in November of the current year is 11.1, rounded to 1 decimal point from 11.05 for adults 18 to 49. We would have to wait until the campaign airs in November to see how accurate the estimated rating or audience projection for program A is. The difference between the projected number along with the actual delivery when the schedules airs becomes a major report card for audience estimators. Bottom line, the station has to deliver on the agreed audience levels, and the buyer has to make sure that it does. Otherwise, the client's results are based on those estimates and they may not be delivered either. Now let's take it a step further. Let me erase. So let's take it a step further. If you're planning budgets and you have a planning cost per point or CPP or a planning cost per thousand or CPM, you will be able to even calculate how much you can pay for program A in your negotiation. Remember always that CPPs or cost per points or CPMs, cost per thousands, are market set prices. But what will ultimately drive pricing is the supply of the commercial inventory and the market demand for that inventory. So let's look how applying a planning cost per point or CPM to project budgets and pricing. How do we do that? So let's say that you have planning, no, hold on a second. Okay, so let's say that we had the planning, the projected rating set at 11.1. And let's say that the agency media buyer and the media planner projected a prime cost per point of 1,500. So this becomes your planning cost per point, meaning that in that time that you're going to be buying, you can pay $1,500 for each rating point. And this is projected. Remember that the 1,500 is the projected cost per point, and that's relative to each market, and in this case, with data that you're given to work with. So with a projected rating of 11.1 and a planning cost per point of 1,500, projected rating times planning cost per point becomes your planning rate. So let's write it here. So 11.1 multiplied times 1,500 equals $16,650. So that means that you can expect to pay, to stay within budget, $16,650 for a 30-second commercial in Program A in future campaigns. This projection formula and general concept can be used using projections or cost per thousand impressions and to project budgets. Remember that you will always be working, planning future executions. So the concept of projections becomes crucial to understand. The projected audience deliveries using audience historical data, guesstimate of media rate increases given the supply and demand realities, competitive media options in the marketplace, going rates for key periods, and other factors will give you a solid foundation how to plan budgets and overall campaign goals, as well as negotiating rates. The more you know and understand numbers, trends, and history, the better you can project future executions. Always remember that future guesstimates will eventually become present realities. So try to be as accurate as possible and monitor campaigns closely when they actually start running. These audience delivery projections have to be agreed upon and delivered by the media, but it is the buyer's responsibility to monitor and hold the media accountable in guarding your client's audience delivery goals to reach their business objectives. Now, practice with other campaign periods that you find in your PowerPoint. And this is a tip. If you're planning, something to keep in mind, if you're planning the campaign at the same time of the year, let's say that you're using February as present time, your shares will not change for any of the campaigns you're planning. You still have to use the February data or book or audience measurement as the most recent data in this specific example that we're using. So go ahead and practice in the problems that you have in the video lesson PowerPoint. And remember that you will always find the answers there. And I'll see you in the next media lesson.